Welcome back to the Reflect Academy. This is video number 4, where we're going to be talking about append-only notes. Now, if you made it through the last long one on fiction with note-taking, you're going to be rewarded in this one because it's short, it's sweet, and it's a bit of a guilty pleasure. But what I mean by that is, imagine you're a kid and your mom keeps annoying you to clean your room, and you keep putting it off and you don't want to. And it turns out that the solution to keeping your room clean is just not worrying about it, and instead just keep throwing things around your room, and you don't ever need to worry about cleaning things up. That's what today's video is for note-taking. That's what we mean by append-only notes. You don't have to worry about going back and editing and cleaning up your notes. In fact, we're going to encourage you to not do any of that and only keep adding to them. So let's kind of get started. When we say append-only as a principle, what do we mean? Well, append just means to add. There's no changing, there's no deleting, there's no editing. You're just going to add things to your notes. So if you imagine that you have, a big stack of physical paper, you're not going to go through and clean out the pieces of paper. You're just going to keep adding new ones onto the stack. And it's going to keep growing infinitely into the future, which if we were using physical paper would be a huge problem, but we're not. We're using digital notes, so there's no reason to worry about that. And when new information comes along, again, we just put it onto that stack. We append it to the existing notes in the existing system rather than replacing content in old notes. And the reason this is great to do is because it's actually how our memory functions. We don't remember things by modifying our past memories. As much as we might like to override things in our head, we can't. We simply accumulate more as time goes on, as if we're adding more entries to a log or a journal. And that's another good way to look at it. It's like, think of it as a book that you just keep writing new pages in. It's a log. And then we search through these notes by, you can call it traversing through time. We're looking for the links between ideas and experiences. And I'll talk about that time component in a later video. But for now, let's talk about some practical examples of doing append-only note-taking, because I think it's a little bit easier to kind of see what we mean by append-only when you see it in practice. So first, I'll talk about the daily notes format. So if I go to my daily notes here, I land on today. I have a dedicated note for this day, and I have dedicated notes for each day going infinitely out into the future. You can think of this as one single note with a new section for each day. And by the way, it also goes back to infinity here, so you can see my day yesterday with all of my elements in it. And again, I can actually just think of this, like a physical notebook. I used to use a physical notebook. I still use it as kind of a whiteboard, but I used to do these elements here in this physical notebook. I would write all my to-dos, my daily reflection, obviously not audio notes, but you know what I mean. And each day I would just, turn a new page in the notebook, and that's where I would start my day. This is exactly what the daily note-taking format is, but it's a really puristic view of the append-only notes. I'm not going to go back on Tuesday, let me use a better example. Tomorrow, when I wake up on Wednesday, I'm not going to go back into this note and erase my to-do items and erase my reflection and redo it. No, I'm just going to do this exact same thing down here, which you can see I did today too. So the easiest way to apply the append-only note-taking methodology in your notes is to use a daily note-taking format. If you're using a note-taking app that does not have the daily note-taking format like Reflect does, totally fine. Just create a new note for each day, and that's your new daily note. Append-only through the daily notes. Okay, let me go back to my Reflect Academy video here now. So we did daily notes format. Let's now go through another example of just adding items to the top of a note. And you can think of this like a working document where you just have different versions. So as an example for this one, I pulled up my daily reflection template. This is the daily reflection that I do each morning. I call on it, and it's the first thing that I do every single day. But I do actually tweak the format. And so what I do, this is what I was originally doing. And I decided to change a couple things. One, I decided to remove this element from the reflection and simplify it, so it's just 2 parts. And I added in another question here down below of what do I wish I was doing today? It's kind of like a Steve Jobs-y thing. I think he was the one that came up with that. If you're not happy with what you're doing, for 5 days in a row or something, you're doing something wrong. I don't know what it exactly is, but it helps me kind of just keep track of if I'm living the life that I want to be living. But I want to know when I changed this. And so I just added this to the top here, November 2023 changes, and then I put my new format. That's it. Instead of just changing the format, I appended it. And again, this is way easier than having to edit things because I'm just going to add to the top. I don't have to go back here and edit the existing note. Okay, that's example number 2. And for a third one, writing an article draft. So I think this is actually a good example because it kind of outlines a process. And usually people have an article idea for something they want to write, and then they go, maybe do research, but then write the outline, and then they write an article based off that outline. So if I go into my note for this article outline here, on top you're seeing the actual article draft. But if we go all the way down to the bottom, you see my original outline. And I keep this in here. I collapse it underneath a bullet so that I don't have to keep looking at it. But this is the outline that I wrote this article on. In a non-append format, you might actually go through the article outline and overwrite it and literally start writing the outline or the article over the outline. But we're not going to do that because I want to keep my outline in case I want to reference it for whatever reason. So that's kind of a workflow example. So you can kind of see how it's really at its core just being lazy. You're not going back and cleaning things out. And that's why, again, I just think that this concept is so much fun, is because how many times in life is the correct, responsible, organized solution to just worry about something less and be more lazy? How wonderful is that? But there's some other reasons that you should do the append-only approach. There's some benefits. So, one is so that your notes don't forget things. Now, going back to that, actually, let me collapse that here. So if I go back to this note here, actually, let me fully open it. I could, click on this show history button and go back and on my past commits here and restore a new version. And I technically haven't lost that information. It's one of the nice things about digital note taking. But that's not really very obvious if I just go right into this note. I'd have to literally go back and search in this history and say, did I overwrite it? I'm not sure. And that's just kind of filled with friction. It's inconvenient. When I do the append-only format, I can literally see the evolution of this note, of what happened over time. I don't lose any of that information. I don't forget it. So that's one of the top benefits. And you also, again, don't have to worry about maintaining your note. I hate having to worry about maintaining my notes. It's hard enough to capture all the information you want to capture, but having to imagine going back in time and deciding what information is important, what's not accurate anymore, what's relevant. Oh God, that just sounds like a headache. I don't want to do that. You shouldn't be having to put that much effort into your note. If your notes feel like they're taking that much effort, something's very, very wrong. And if you haven't watched the previous video on frictionless note taking, go do that. And speaking of friction, my last point here, it's just less mental friction. It's easier to take notes. It's more pleasant. You look forward to it more. When I feel like I have to upkeep my notes, it feels like, I don't know, I guess back to my original analogy. It feels like I'm a teenager and my parents forcing me to clean my room, but really I just want to go play outside. Go play outside in your notes. Go have the fun. Don't spend time, looking back and trying to cultivate this perfect artificial garden of thoughts. No, your brain's not perfect. There's lots of things swimming around here. That's part of the beauty of it. Give yourself the freedom to operate your notes in the same way. You'll find that it's not only, more functional because you have more information and your notes actually perform their utility better, but it's just nicer. It's more fun. You'll take notes more often and you'll actually look forward to taking them. So treat your notes as append only.